Okay, in this video we're going to look at the talk part of the question B's of paper 1. Now we're looking at the ordinary level questions, but the same things apply to the higher level paper. We'll be looking at some ordinary level questions though, but the same rules apply to the higher level paper. Now talks came up in 2017 and a podcast talk in 2015 and in various different years in the second section of paper 1, the long composing questions as well. They come up quite often. So what we'll do in this lesson is take a look at what you're expected to do in a talk, what the language should be like, what the audience is, what the context of a talk is. We'll take a look at the past questions and then we'll break down a sample answer and show you what it is to do a good talk. So let's start by looking at, in the same structure as the other videos, first of all we look at the form a talk will take. And again, it's a page and a half of up to 2 pages of writing, and really because of the 40 minutes that you're given to do these questions, that's not too much to ask, is it? Now, like any talk, if you're speaking in front of a room full of people, the first thing that you would be expected to do is to welcome the people and introduce yourself and say what you are there to talk about. They would be the 3 basic things. So say hello, welcome the people, say thank them for coming, introduce yourself, so who are you, why are you there, and just give a brief sentence or 2 on what it is you're going to be talking about. And of course this is all dependent on what the question is, so what you're actually talking about. Then you write the body of the talk, the main parts of the talk. It should be 3 or 4 paragraphs long. That's going to be the bulk of your answer. You're actually going to talk about the issue. And then you're going to conclude and thank the people. You have to make sure you thank the people for coming to your talk and wish them a safe journey home or a restful night. Reassure them. Okay, there's nothing really else. There's not going to be any tips or gimmicks like in the other videos I showed you about, you're not going to put any images in or do's and don'ts. A talk is a script that you have written in order to be read in front of a room full of people. They're not going to see the script. They're going to listen to you deliver the script. So it's less about the visual aspects and more about what you say and how you say it. So that's why there's no real gimmicks in it like you would have, like the love hearts that I spoke about in the diary entries, or the little smiley faces at the end of a line, or like I said, the little image boxes for an article. So what's the purpose of a talk? Well, the purpose of a talk is it depends on the question, but it's to inform people, or it's to inspire people, or it's to reassure people after a troubling event, or it's to remember somebody. Because a specific type of talk known as a eulogy is a talk that's given at a funeral where you remember the person that has died and you're talking about his or her life. Okay, that's a very, very specific type of talk, and you have to bear that in mind when you are writing it, because the purpose would be to remember that person, not yourself and not your own hopes and dreams. You're not giving advice, you're not trying to inspire people, you're just simply remembering them. And irregardless of what type of talk it is, whether it's to inform, to inspire, to reassure, or to remember, you should try and do it in an entertaining way. Okay, and that even goes for a eulogy. Those of you who have been to funerals and have listened to eulogies, you probably know that the best, if you could put it in those terms, the best eulogies are the ones that make the audience laugh, or at least feel good for a moment. A eulogy shouldn't be all misery. That's not the appropriate time for sadness. A eulogy or a public talk of any real shape or description should always focus on the positive. whether it's an informative talk, or inspiring talk, or reassuring talk, or a talk in which you remember a loved one who has passed away. They should always aim to make the listeners feel better. So what is your audience? Well, this is totally dependent on the question, and we'll look at a question in a minute. But your audience could be a room full of teenagers, it could be adults, or it could be both. And you have to remember this. You have to remember who your audience is. Remember what the question is in your introduction and in your delivery. And that's really important. And, you know, there's marks going for this. If it's a talk to teenagers, you've got to welcome the teenagers. You've got to say hello to them and identify them and tell them that you are a fellow student. If it's to a room full of adults, you need to be respectful of that and to thank them for coming and to introduce yourself. And, you know, you've got to bear that in mind. Now, regardless of to whom you're delivering this talk to, you do maintain a level of formality, as you are usually representing some organisation. So even if it is to a room full of fellow students or teenagers, you don't just, you know, talk to them like you would talk to your friends at lunchtime. There's still an air of formality. You've been given an official duty to talk to people, so you've got to respect that and be formal. You should ask them questions. So, wouldn't you agree, ladies and gentlemen? You know, you've got to keep them engaged. Or when in your introduction, you could say, well, here we all are. So you're making it obvious that there's more than just you in the room. You're the one doing the talking, but there are several people listening. And you've got to make that obvious in your answer. You're probably all sick of listening to me at this stage. Slightly ironic if you've been listening to all these videos that I've made over the past while. You're probably all sick of listening to me at this stage. But putting that little line in there, that little humorous, self-depreciating line, you put it in because you're just making the examiner aware, oh, I know that this is a talk, that there are people that will be listening to me. I'm not delivering it in front of my mirror at home. I'm delivering it in front of a room full of people. So in other words, make it obvious that you know you are speaking to a room full of people. That's the audience. You've got to... It's more important than in any other question be, the audience. This is really important. You don't have an audience for a diary other than yourself. Your audience for an article is very impersonal. They don't get to see you. They don't get to listen to you. There's a distance. They're reading something you've written. For a letter to the editor, you're just writing it to the letter to the editor. You're not writing it to a room full of people again. The audience for a speech is crucial because it's a live performance. It's in front of people, and you've got to work that into what you write. What register should you have? What should the language be like? Well, that entirely again depends on the topic or the audience. So if it's a eulogy, your language should be quite serious and somber. Use short sentences. It's quite emotional. You should reflect on the person. There should be an element of humour in there, but not slapstick humour, not, you know, riotous humour. Just maybe mention a funny anecdote you have of the person. If it's to the school's parents' association, you should be respectful. You should be mannerly. You should be aware that these people are adults and you are representing the school, and your speech or your talk should represent that. You should appeal to them rather than give out to them. You shouldn't lecture them. You should try to get them on your side. If it's to fellow students, it's okay to be slightly what you'd call jocular. So jokes, humour. You know, you could maybe speak in a tone. If you're a sixth year speaking to first years, you could maybe try to use the type of language that first years understand. You know, tone it down as opposed to try to be very grand and posh. It would be the opposite. You could maybe make references to youth culture if you were talking to teenagers, to students, things that they would understand. That wouldn't necessarily apply if you were talking to a room full of adults. You know, so your audience is very important because your audience dictates your register for this newspaper, for this talk question. Whoever the audience is will strongly affect the register. So you really need to pay attention to that in the question. And the context, of course, depends on the question. Is it in a large hall of people? Is it to first year students? Is it to adults? Is it to a board? Is it a podcast talk where there's nobody really looking at you, but they can hear you? Okay? And there's no specific rules that you can lay out to them about, where the exits are located or to switch off your mobile phone, because they'll be listening to you at a later date. It won't be live. These are all important, because if you're aware of these things, then your talk should be what it should be, depending on the audience. Let's take a look at a question, a typical talk. So I know this is a little bit hard to see, but you can just about make it out. You have been asked to give a short talk to a group of students. So first up, the audience is going to be young people. Now, even more than that, they are about to start first year. So they're first year students. Write out the text of the talk you would give. So you need to be aware straight away. Who are my audience? My audience are young first years. Very young, 12, 13 years of age. They're nervous. They look up to you. You've got to respect your position and not be, immature about it. You're there to represent a school from a student angle, and you've got to take that seriously. So let's take a look at this person's answer. Well, here you all are, looking very smart. I must say, in your new uniforms, you're probably feeling a bit nervous. I remember I did when I started. You've just come from primary school, where you were the big girls and boys, to the secondary, where you've no doubt noticed some of the 6 years are over 6 feet tall. Now, I've highlighted some aspects of that talk in certain colours to go along with what was actually going on here. So you notice in the green here, all these green. What is the author doing? They're empathizing. They're getting the audience on side by immediately saying, look, I know how you feel. I understand. And that's what a good talk should have. There's an awareness of who your audience is. It's the first years. And the language is toned down as a result of that. In the yellow, you see the authors, they're winning the audience over. Oh, you're looking very smart. Now, I'm not going to give you a long talk. Oh, I know what it's like. I remember when I was in first year. And look, you can come to any of us and hopefully we can help. So they're putting them at ease and they're winning them over. Also, the body of the talk, the part in purple, it takes up most of the space. It's very informative. So the things that you can do, the activities that you can do, the different teams that you can join, the prefix system. There's facts in there. That's the body of the talk. It's the reason why you were hired to do the talk. Okay, it's not just going to be about reassurance. You've got to put some facts in there as well. Now, some optional extras that could have gone into this talk that didn't, but you could think about this. You could, at the beginning of your talk, you could state, please ask any questions at the end. I would be more than willing to answer your questions, but please hold them to the end. So you're making it obvious that it's to a room full of people. You could say something like, I will be available for advice in room 23. Please come and ask me whenever you need. So again, it's obvious that this is a personal talk. Even more so, you could say, please put your phones on silent, ladies and gentlemen. Now that's really making it clear that this is to a room full of people and it's a talk that you shouldn't really distract. Or even further than that, at the start of your talk, you could go over where the exits are located for health and safety reasons. So the principal has asked me just to inform you all that there's an exit located down the back there where it says exit, and there's also an exit over to my right. And if at any stage the fire alarm goes off, please make your ways calmly and quietly to the exits. Okay, so that's a talk, a sample talk. Very nice question to try. But you have to remember, it's a talk. It's to a room full of people. Now, what room full of people will dictate what language you use and what advice you give, or whether you're informing, reassuring, remembering. So the question is crucial, the audience is crucial, your language is crucial.